right, 1 o'clock here in the Boston area. Time to get started. Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present, as I do every Wednesday, Dion McCormick, no relation, who's our premier solutions engineer, as well as the founder of Giant Killer Training and the author of the Alpha Training materials you can find there as well. Today, I believe Dion is going to be going over the continuous discussion of the Viewbox control, but we're also here to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Dion, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
There we go.
You are.
Well, yeah. Hey, thank you, everybody. Everybody's at home, I know. So we appreciate you taking the time out of your quarantining to visit with us. What I would like us to do is, if you have questions, we're going to have a topic today that's a follow-on of our previous topic of the Viewbox. But if you have questions on that or others, go to the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel and just enter your questions there. We'll monitor them closely and be able to handle them from that standpoint. So again, we are here really for your questions. And actually today's demonstration was built around the questions that came in post our other one. So we've been doing a series on Viewboxes, which is a very powerful control built in to develop user interfaces, very dynamic, very powerful user interfaces. We've been focusing on a lot of the mechanics of how to connect to data with the Viewbox, because the Viewbox basically takes a set of data and HTML and combines them together. Now, we are going to continue to talk a little bit more about the mechanics, but then we're going to shift our focus in the next upcoming demonstrations to focus on how to better style your Viewboxes and some techniques that are associated from there. Now, along with that, we've also gotten a lot of questions, and I wanted to reach out to the people who've sent the questions in about the tabbed UI replacement. And interesting, between the Viewbox and that, we've gotten a huge amount of feedback and questions and things like that. So just for anybody who's asked a question about the tabbed UI replacement using UX components, I'm assembling all those questions. I'm getting with the team. Actually, our team has also been doing some fun styling things that we're going to demonstrate. And so we're going to do a whole series on that tabbed UI replacement concept very, very soon. And so stay tuned for that. We're putting all that together. And for the folks who have put in the questions, just want to say thank you, a little patience, and we'll get that wrapped up and put together. And so you're going to have all the information you need to kind of perform the kind of tasks and really replace the tabbed UI. So again, thank you so much for sending that in. We're taking it very serious, and we're going to put it together and deliver it back from there. Now, again, today's going to focus on the Viewbox, and we're going to focus again on the mechanics of the Viewbox control. And specifically, a question came in from one of our loyal listeners, in which they asked, well, I've got two Viewboxes and I want to kind of treat them as sort of a parent-child relationship. Think of like the linked grids concept built into the grid technology. So what we're going to do is go through a demonstration where we're going to build a parent-child Viewbox setup where you have a parent and a set of data there and a child that's connected to a different set of data, and show you the techniques for how to connect them together. And it's really not that difficult. And again, the neat thing is that Viewboxes are very lightweight, so you're going to see that the performance and kind of the environment is much snappier than, say, you would get with a grid or even a list control. So let me go ahead and switch over into my development area. And for those who are new, this is our alpha development environment. And I want to show you a demonstration of what this looks like. And then we're going to go ahead and build it from scratch so you'll see the pieces. And if you're interested in getting this control, I'm going to go ahead and post it to anybody. Just send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com. By the way, that's also where you can send questions that we can help answer and put into our ongoing pieces. And again, your questions what really drive our content. So we really appreciate any and all questions that you bring in. So let's go ahead and do a demonstration. Okay. And so you'll see here we have, and how's actually, I want to do a sound check on the sound. Is that sounding okay there, Dave? Is that coming okay?
It sounds like you have a little bit of a cold, to be honest with you. But the microphone's working
Exactly.
perfect.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, it's hard to talk through the respirator that I have on there from there.
You got one. Oh, good, good, good.
Okay. So yeah, exactly. It's one of those days. No, it's just a little. Actually, I live in Texas, and we actually are getting as if the coronavirus wasn't enough, or COVID-19. We're also getting a huge amount of pollen in the air because of the shift in temperature and stuff like that.
That's
So
true
that
up here in the
sometimes will make
Northeast
your
too. Yeah, it's wicked.
yeah, whatever. It's off the charts. They have those little pollen counters, so that's what's getting in there. So I'm feeling okay right now. Check with me in 24 to 48 hours and see if I'm still around. And from that standpoint here, okay. So we have a very simple structure right here where you have on the left, you have. Oh, hold on 1 second. I just need to adjust something on my screen. And also took a little drink, so we'll be a little better. Okay, so on the left, we have a set of records. This is a list box control here. And this list box is actually being driven from a data standpoint from our North Winds data structures or built-in. So I'll go to my connection strings and you'll see I'm just using the built-in AE demo Northwind. And the reason I'm doing that primarily is that when I send this out, you can just go in and re-edit this and point to your local location, and then boom, the thing will just work. So this is a nice way to kind of do demonstrations because I can just hand it off. You can adjust. And this database, by the way, just for folks that are interested, is automatically installed when you install the development environment. It just goes boom in there and is in your system. So you're always going to have that available. So now what we'd like to do next is go ahead and close this, show you this. So we have ours. Now, when I click on a row over here, you'll notice that the view box on the right immediately updates. So what it's doing is I have a parent-child relationship of our parent data, which is the customer data, and then this is our order data. And this is like the order number, and you can see I kept the customer ID in here just so you would see that information as you go through, so you can see how it's limiting there. So what's nice about that is now that I have these view boxes, A, it loads up really fast since it's a very lightweight component. Two, it's got nice little features like, you're seeing it's doing like a little animation. You can turn that off if you don't want it. And then also you could go ahead and, enable this to then do other things with it. You could actually have another view box after it that's linked to here and on and on. And also we can go in and style this so it looks really nice, different, say this, we can adjust the styling. I did very simple kind of grid-like styling, but there's nothing to say you can't change these to make them look a little bit more like a mobile interface or something along those lines. And this is a responsive interface, so as I expand it, etc., view boxes are responsive in nature. So what I'd like to do is go through the steps to build this and show you how I built the parent view box, the child view box, and more importantly, how to connect them together. So to do so, we're going to use the UX component. So I'm going to create a new UX component, and I'm going to just go ahead and do a blank one. Now I'm going to go to my controls and I'm going to go down here to my panel cards, and I could do a panel layout and panel cards just manually, which you've seen me do many times, but I like to use the quick panels. And this is just a little technique is that you can go in here and you can create a predefined layout. So I clicked on quick panels, and then here I'm clicking insert predefined layout, and I've got this nice little panel layout with 2 cards. Boom, sets it up, and boom. I immediately have my panel layout, my panel cards with all set and ready to go. As you can see, it saves a few clicks. You can do this manually, but it's up to you. And remember, if you really like this, you could even save yourself more time by merely selecting those and going to, where is it? It's always, there's so many things here. Save these selected controls to a library, go my favorite panels, click OK. And the next time I want to have in there, I can just go menu, load controls from library, click my favorite panels, and boom, that. And that could include text boxes, control bars, everything. So as you can use this kind of way to save these controls so you can create your own library of predefined structures so that it's easy for you to build things. And again, all I did was highlight the controls I liked. I did a save selected controls to library. And then if I actually have some controls, I can do load controls here. If not, I can go to this menu up here and also do load controls. And you can see there's already some predefined ones in here, some date range selectors, some buttons, list navigation buttons, things like that. But then you can create your own and have those available in your projects. It's pretty nice from there. So I'm going to do a few other things here. I'm going to put a panel header. And in that panel header, I'm going to go ahead and create a little piece of text. So I'll call this my Viewbox parent child demonstration. Okay. Oops, sorry there. Put that there. And I'm going to go ahead and delete my static text because I don't need that static text here in here. Okay. Oh, hold on one second. I'm going to take another little quick drink just to clear my throat. Thank you. Okay, so let's go over here. We'll go to our data controls. We'll put our view box in here. And it is a data control since it's linked to data. You can load it with data. And I'll call this VB parent. And I'm going to go ahead and add my child one, even though it's not set up, so I'd have it ready to go. I'm going to go VB child. Okay, so now I've done that. I'd like to save this. And I'll go ahead and say Viewbox parent child. As you can see, I like to use the same names. Webinar _UX. Okay. So first thing we need to do, oh, interesting. Yeah, I get that every once in a while. That's kind of an interesting, I'm running a new pre-release and I'll see a problem there. So let's go ahead and save it. Gives me this error. So this is something of mine that I'm doing. So let's go ahead and create a new one. Ooh, again. So it's something in the newest release that I'm checking out. So, but I'm going to save this real quick. And let's go ahead and put in my view box here. Okay. Nope. I think it has to do with this. Actually, let me do this. Let me go to my view box here, data source. I might have to switch over to my other machine. This was working a little bit there. So static database query. And we're going to select our database query. I'm just seeing, make sure this works here. I think it might be if I have my view box and it doesn't have information in it. Yeah, I think it has to do with something. And you'll notice what happened is now when I actually put something, if I do it like here, let me go ahead and show everybody that. Guess it's not really mattered, but if I go here and I delete this and I put my Viewbox child in there, and I believe if I try to save this, yep, I get a problem because what it's trying to do is I think it's looking for content in the Viewbox and I haven't set any content. So again, this will be fixed in the next release. So we'll get that set up right there. I'll come back and delete, I'll go ahead and delete this for now. And we'll go ahead and save this. And it has to do with the pre-rendering, what is going on there. Okay, so let me go through this again. What I did is I went into my Viewbox parent. And the first thing I did was basically tell it, and actually I went through that a little too quick. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that again. And plus in post, I can start it at this point and everything looks good. So I'll go Viewbox and we'll go VB _ parent. And I go into my view box and I go to my data source. Okay, so by default, this could be an HTML only, but I want to set this to data. And I'm going to set my data to be a database query. So this says I'm going to load the data into this view box using database query. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to select connection string, and this is we're going to select our built-in AA demo. We're going to use fields from a table, but this could be SQL. Doesn't have to be. It can also be many other kind of things, but we'll go ahead and go customers. Go into our field list. We'll select about a few of these things real quick. And then we could set a filter if we wanted, a whole other kind of things from there. So basically I've defined where I'm getting my data from. Now, if I click here on fields, it's going to show me, okay, here are the fields that I'm bringing back. And then I'm going to go over here to my Viewbox layout, and now I'm going to actually lay out how I want them on the screen. So one of the nice things about Alpha, especially in terms of the new Viewbox, is that I'm going to go ahead and click Add Item, go to my data controls, and you'll see I have my data controls here. So now I've got those labels here. But there's a really powerful, often you're going to be using a view box kind of like a list. So I'm actually going to click here and highlight there. I'm going to click Add Item, and you'll see we have containers. And there's a whole series of different types of containers you can use, which are really powerful. But the one that's really, really nice is called the ListRowContainer. And basically it turns the view box into sort of a list control, but you still maintain all the power of your styling. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. So you'll see that it puts a ListRowContainer around my fields, and it's done a couple other really cool things that are built into it. First and foremost is that you'll notice over here for ListRowContainer, it has something called row value. And this is similar when you create a list control, you tell it what is sort of when a person selects a row in the list, what should I set the value to be? What field should I do it? And this is very similar. I can click here and I can say, which one of these do I want to be sort of the value? When someone clicks on this view box, what I want to set the value? So I'm going to select customer ID. So it's sort of a pre-built structure that's handy for you. So now whenever I click on this row, whatever row it is, it's going to pick up what row's customer ID is and set the row value to there. Now it does something else which is really nice, is it creates this A row menu, but I'm going to come back to that in a moment. So I've got my layout now, which can consist of my fields in here. And remember, I could go freeform and then edit this and make it look more like a mobile interface, etc. I can also use, which is really nice, the multi-layout function. I think that's under, where is it? Yep, multiple layouts. And I could literally have multiple layouts for this view box. We demonstrated that a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go over here and fill the container because I want to fill this panel card here. We'll save it. We don't get the error now. So I go in here. And you'll notice then I've got my rows coming out here. And you'll notice that when I click on it, it kind of gives me my row selection behavior. And I can scroll up and down and see my different rows from here. So that's a really easy way. Now, you'll notice my font is kind of large compared to my demo. So I'm going to go here to my properties, and I'm going to use the compact theme. And go back to working preview, and we'll see that now it gives me a little more compact structure there. And you can play and adjust with that to your heart's desire. So now what I want to do is I want to have two things. One is when I click on this, I want to have my second view box here update. So let's go ahead and build our second view box, link it to our data, and then start talking about how we link the two together. So I'm going to go back to my controls here. I'm going to go to my panel card number 2. I'm going to add my new view box. I'm going to call this view box child. Now what I'm going to do is go into my view box child. Very similar process. I'm going to say data, and my data is going to be my database query. I'm going to go into my connection string. I'm going to select that Northwinds database. So I'm basically taking it from the same database. Go into my table name, and now what I'm going to do is find my orders. So I know there's a relationship in this database between customer and orders. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. Go in here. I'm going to go ahead and select a few fields and click OK. So I've done that. And so that's ready to go there. I can go to my view box layout, and I'm going to follow the same process I did before. I'm going to add item, and I'm going to first add my let's go ahead and add our data controls. And then I'm going to highlight all of those, and I'm going to add an item, and I'm going to go ahead and put in my container and my list row container, since I'm going to treat it basically the same way as I had before. Okay, so now I've got my data source. I've got my Viewbox layout. If I click here, save this, you'll see now that our view boxes are operating, but you'll notice a couple of things. Oops, I got to fill the container, but it's bringing back all of the rows for the orders because I haven't linked these things together yet, and that's what I'm going to do next. But again, you can see it's immediately working, and it's treating it like a list, and it's bringing back that data, and works pretty nicely, and it's pretty snappy. So I'm going to fill the container. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to do the following, which is set. When I click on the parent row, I want it to filter the child row. And so I'm going to use a very powerful concept. And let me go ahead and open up my original one here. And I'm going to use a concept of an argument. And we've talked about arguments before, but we're going to be using that there. So I'm going to go ahead and go into here. And what I want to do is create an argument for this UX that basically watches VB parent and says, whatever the value of VB parent is, I'm going to set that argument. Then I'm going to use that argument to filter this VB child. So let's go ahead and create our argument. Now there's two ways I can create the argument. I can actually, inside here on the data source, I can actually create arguments right here. So I don't actually have to go to the UX, but this is just a shortcut to the UX. What I like to do is I go to the UX, go to properties, and then I say filter on properties for arguments. And that takes me down here. And sort of like my action JavaScript, I like to try and centralize where I define these things so I always know where they are later on. So I go in here, this opens up my argument builder. I'm going to click insert argument. I'm going to call this customer ID. And it's of type character. Okay. So this, if this were like an ID from a auto increment row, it'd probably be a numeric. So now what I'm going to say is, hey, okay, I've created this argument, but where do I actually want to get the value of this argument from? So I'm going to go over here, and you'll notice I have different ways to set this argument. And this is really powerful. One is that I can get it from a variable. So I can get it like from a session variable or something along those lines, or a page variable. The other thing you can do, which is nice, is that if you're using the extended user information table, which is a built-in functionality, you could actually look up in that table, and for the current logged in user, you could get it like region code or employee ID or something like that. You can also call an XBasic function to set this argument, but the one I'm going to use here is called set value at runtime. And when I do that, I have value here, and this allows me to select my fields that are on my current interface. So if I had like a couple other fields, like an ID field or something like that, I could create an argument that's monitoring the value of that field. And whenever it changes, the argument changes. So in this case, I want to point it to my parent so that whenever the value of the parent changes, it sets this argument here. So now I have an argument that's going to look at my parent, and whenever that parent changes, it's going to set this argument customer ID there. So now I can click save here. Now I have my argument that's looking at this, but now what I want to do is filter this child using that argument. So I'm going to go into my child control, which is my view box here. I'm going to go to my data source. And so you'll see I have a filter criteria. So I can set the filter of this here. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. This opens up my filter, and I can say customer ID is equal to. Now, if I wanted to, if I always wanted it to be one thing, I could just put in the value, but that's limited functionality because that's fixed. So rather what you can do is right here, you can say customer ID equals, and then I insert argument, and you'll notice that since I've created that argument, it shows up here. That's why I want to set those up first. So I click that, and now what will happen is that the filter for this child component will be customer ID equal to whatever the value of the customer ID. And again, remember, this argument could be set many different ways, from a session variable, from a current logged in user, you name it. Now, one thing I wanted to illustrate, and I've talked about before, but you'll notice the nomenclature. Normally, when you're creating it by hand, you would put single quote, alpha key, close quote, close single quote, because this is standard SQL interface. And you have to remember these quotes so that it understands that this is a text and that's a text. But in my case, when I'm inserting an argument, you'll notice that I put in colon and then the argument name, but no little quotes around it. And the reason why is alpha, when it goes to evaluate this, says, oh, what kind of argument is? You'll notice earlier we defined that argument as a character. So it knows to wrap it for me behind the scenes. So it actually makes this pretty readable. You don't have to worry about missing an extra little thing. Alpha takes. And it also is really powerful too, because alpha has built into it some nice things to prevent SQL injection attacks and other things like that. So arguments are really a good way to go. I mean, you can always write your own expressions here, but I highly recommend when you can to use arguments because it gives you more protection and it makes sure it gets rid of little, problem areas like I forgot to put a single quote in there. Okay.
Can I
Yes, sir.
interrupt for 1 second?
Oh, no,
So
please.
the question is, can you do this sort of filtering on more than one field? Can the row value be based on more than one field?
Absolutely. You would just go and order date is equal to, and then create like an order date argument pointed to another field.
Okay.
And yep, you can make this as complicated as you want, and you can have as many arguments as you want and create that up based on those multiple fields. Great question.
Could I concatenate a couple of fields together? Is that allowed?
Oh, yeah. So
Okay.
absolutely. Now, what I would probably do in that case is I would probably create a single hidden field that's, and I'll come back
Yes.
and show
Yep.
you that in a moment,
Mhm.
and then refer to that, because instead of junking this up, I can make this really clean because I have it, but I'll show you that in a moment. Let me come back to that and show you how to do
Thank you.
that in a moment. Good point. Okay, so now I have my child that's going to be focused on looking at that parent and seeing what it is. Now, you'll notice when I run it here, we're not there yet, but we're very close. So we have our first list, we have our second list, but you'll notice our second list is currently not filtered, meaning, or I'm sorry, it is filtered. So when it ran this, it said, what's the value of that argument? Well, nothing has been selected here. So it gives you this here. Now, when I click here, what I want it to do is update that. So you see, well, no, not yet. So the reason why is that we need to put in a little piece of action JavaScript that says when someone takes an action here, just do a refresh of this. And when that refresh occurs, it will then look up the argument, put in the filter criteria, filter the data, and then redisplay it for me. And it's fairly straightforward. I just go into design. I now go over here to JavaScript actions, and I'm going to add a new action. And I'm going to call this VB child refresh. And I'm going to go in here. I'm going to add a new action, and I'm going to do the view box. So you notice we have the view box control actions here. I'm going to select the action name to be refresh data. Notice we could also do things like select layout, update template school. You can actually change the HTML on the fly, or populate viewbox, which is a more sophisticated where you can feed it some data. But we're going to just do a refresh. All we want to do is say, hey, update yourself. So we click OK. Now it's asking us, well, which view box should we refresh? So I'm selecting there, and we can say whether it's animated or not. I'm going to leave it not animated for now. And I'll go refresh child view box. Now I could also do other things here, give them a message, etc., because I can chain these action JavaScripts, but I'm going to keep it pretty simple here. Now you'll notice this is still red. That denotes that it hasn't been defined. It's a little refresh thing. If I go back in here, it's already been done. So you'll see that and you'll go, wait, what went wrong? But actually it's just a refresh of this screen right here. So let's click OK. Now we have that action, but we actually have to tell it to be triggered, meaning that when someone clicks on VB parent, we want it to trigger that JavaScript action. So we have to go back into VB parent. And let's go back and look at our layout here. So you'll notice we have our ListRowContainer. Currently, it's getting the row value customer ID that then goes and sets the argument for us. But the other thing that's really neat about the list row container is that if I go to items, you'll see it creates a pre-made item. And this pre-made item is triggered. And what items are, just as a reminder, items are just little pieces of JavaScript code that you can add that get triggered when someone interacts with their Viewbox. And so it's created one automatically that when the person clicks on a row, it will automatically trigger this item. And you'll notice that you can then have an on-click event and you'll see it's blank right now. So what we're going to do is go to on-click. It shows you a little sample JavaScript, but I'm going to go ahead and go to Action JavaScript, insert code to run it, and select our refresh. So I'm not actually putting the JavaScript here, I'm just referencing a central location, which is a really good way to go, because if you ever need to change this, you can just go here. You don't have to go dig it out of this environment here. So again, when someone clicks on a row in the Viewbox, it's going to trigger this A row, which subsequently is going to trigger this run action. So let's click OK. Let's save it. And we'll go ahead. And you'll notice now, when I click on the row, it basically triggers the refresh of this. This Viewbox says, oh, okay, first thing I needed to go is look at the argument. What is the argument? Oh, currently it's BLONP, which is the value of this row. Then it builds that filter string. And then what that does is then say refresh it. So therefore, when it does the query to refresh this, it only brings back things that match customer ID is equal to that argument, which is here. From there, so a few little mechanisms, but we're kind of leveraging some of the neat little features built into it to treat this as a list. Now, once I've got that set up, I can go in and change the structure, the layout of these things. I could add other view boxes that get triggered simultaneously, styling, you name it. It's really fun stuff you can do from there. Now, there's a question of like, well, what if I wanted to have a more complex, like concatenate a couple things together? Well, I'm going to go ahead and show that here. So I'm going to go into panel card number 2. I'm going to add another panel card. And I'm doing that by right-clicking on the in tag for panel card new. And I'm going to go ahead and put in panel card. And I'll insert a panel card here. Now this will show, if I don't want it to show, I could go ahead and dock it so it wouldn't be seen on the screen. And then I'm going to just go ahead and put in a text box here. And I'll call it my filter condition. And I would normally hide this text box. So let's say, for instance, in my thing, I have like a customer ID field and a, let's say a date field or a customer or region code, etc. The idea is that maybe I have a data bound that brings this information in, and then I want to filter a view box related to that based on this information here. So again, I would set an argument to point to one or more of these, and then I could build it up into the filter criteria. But if I want to do something a little more interesting, what I could do is I could go into this filter condition right here and go down to my calculated field expression. And I could use that to, on the fly, build this filter condition, then create an argument that points to that, and then use that argument in the filter criteria as I did. So let's go ahead and show you how you would do that. So I'll go in here, I'm going to insert a field, and I'll say it's customer ID, and then I'm going to go plus ampersand plus some other stuff plus, and then I'll insert my field region code. Actually, go ahead and put it like a ampersand plus. Okay, so this will be turned into a set of JavaScript. And it'll give you an error if it can't turn it into JavaScript. Now let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. So when this runs, so notice it's got some of it, but I can put in customer ID blonde P. And notice as I type what's going on, it's automatically updating this. And my region code is Central US. So you'll see that it built up my filter, that it ran that little expression and builds up whatever you have in here. Now what I can do is go into my properties, go to arguments. I'm going to create a new argument. I'm going to call that filter condition. And it's of type character. Again, we can define the different types here. Then I'm going to say, you know what? Keep an eye on that filter condition field and set this here. Now I could literally go anywhere I wanted. Maybe here I'll go into this, and then I would go to the data source and I go into filter, and maybe postal code is equal to my filter condition. So what will happen now is that when this Viewbox is refreshed, it's going to go grab the argument that's then going to go look at that field, which is probably hidden, and then apply that filter right here. So essentially you can create that. Now, and then what that will do is then run the appropriate, and then when you refresh this Viewbox, it's going to then talk to the database and say, give me a where clause where this information is here. And that's how it goes there. So again, there's a couple different ways you can handle it. You could also, if you wanted to, if you didn't want to do kind of like a hidden field or something like that, remember I can go into my Viewbox here and I literally could create a custom function that returns a set of data. So I could actually take all of this, put it into an XBasic function, and then return that data. So again, all that kind of complex filtering and stuff like that could be handled in scripting, which may be easier in certain situations. It's really up to you on how you want to do it from there. So that is how you would attack that. But again, the idea behind it is that you want to do as little coding as possible, let Alpha do most of the work. And as you can see, by simply creating two view boxes, using the built-in list row capability of a view box it actually handles the selection aspect. It also then sets the value of this view box and also allows you to trigger, in my case, a refresh of a second view box and off to the races from there. So that came in from one of our listeners. We really appreciate that. Gave us a chance to put this together. And what we'll do is, again, if you'd like a copy of this, just send us an email at guides@alphasoftware.com and we'll add it in there.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dion. Taking a look here through the questions. The first question I have about Viewbox here is the person would like to use a Viewbox just for HTML without any data, but it seems like a Viewbox control requires at least one record. Is there some workaround for that?
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and go to this right here, and I'm going to add another Viewbox. Mm-hmm. And I'll call this Viewbox, we'll call it HTML. Mm-hmm. So remember, when I go to the data source, if I select it to data, then it's looking for data. If you leave it like this, when I go to my layout, I can go, like for instance, let's see, actually we'll do this, H1, webinar, fun. Okay, oh, not that's gotta be an H1 closing tag. We'll click OK. Let's go into our working preview. And there's my HTML. So you don't have to have it data driven. It can just be purely HTML that you want to display on your page. And we've had a control, like, I would highly suggest starting to use that more and more. We did also have a container called the freeform container, or freeform layout, excuse me. And that performs essentially the same thing. Is basically, this is just a control, and when you edit it, you can put in just HTML here. And in fact, we have some cool little templates we could put in here. We've talked about those before. So, and then what's nice too is that if you've hidden fields, you can insert those fields in here. So let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. So it's very similar to the Viewbox. It's like a precursor to the Viewbox. Viewbox then allows things to be tracked. So you notice it just puts in this nice looking HTML here right into your interface. And again, all this is just HTML, so you can trap these buttons and things. The thing I like about the Viewbox is, for instance, in here, what I'd have to do is I'd go like on click, and then is equal to, then insert the action JavaScript here. With the view box, you create items in here, and when you create the item, you can trap a whole bunch of different other behaviors like down, hold, swipes, and stuff like that. So you'll find, and then this actually then, like when I add this item, then I can associate it with that button, and then off to the races it goes. So again, this is really a nice, quick and dirty way to put in, HTML. If it's purely static, go ahead and use that. Viewbox is similar, but then you can expand it to make it data-driven. And there's a lot of really cool things you can do. Even if you have a single record, you can literally, like for instance, let's take an example here. Actually, I think this would be a good example real quick of the difference. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy this here. And I'm gonna go into my Viewbox HTML here. I'm gonna go ahead and delete this out of here. And I'm gonna make this a data source. This is a really interesting question. I've been playing with this, and I'm gonna create static data. So static data. And I'm going to in some sample data there, but I'm just going to have a single item in there. Okay. And I'll go cat name, super cat. Okay. So I have a set of JSON data. Now, again, this record could have come back from an API call, could come back from the database, could be a session variable that, I mean, there's different ways to load, but think of it as I've got this single static record. Now what I'm going to do is go to my Viewbox layout. Oops. Excuse me. And I'm going to paste this. So remember, that's what we had before in our thing here. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to delete all this. And what I want it to do is insert the field and put the cat name in the Viewbox here. Okay, so basically same kind of concept, but now I'm making this HTML data driven. So now if I go in here, and you'll see in a moment here, you'll see it rendered that HTML, but notice what it did here. It put in that value here. And this gets even more powerful. I'm gonna pause the screen because I wanna show you something really cool. And so let me go ahead and do something real quick. I need to, let's see. Trying to find, oh, did I not put that on this system? Bear with me real quick. Okay, let's go back here. Well, what I was going to show you, which is kind of cool, is that actually, let me go ahead and go in here to my HTML. Let me go ahead and copy this real quick. And go back to my data here, go into my data, and I'm going to say cat picture. And I'm going to paste a URL there. And notice this is coming from Amazon here. Now I can go to this layout right here and put inside there my field, which is my, oops, I didn't rename it. Let's go back to the fields. Yeah, oh, it didn't do a refresh. So we'll just go here, and I can even do it like this, cat underscore picture. Okay, so what it's going to do now is not only am I going to change this static text, I'm going to go ahead and put here, and actually, you know what, let's put the cat name here, and I'm just going to say description stuff. Okay, so again, in my data source, I had a cat name and a cat picture, and the cat picture just was a URL to an image, and this could be local on your server, it could be up on Amazon S3, you name it, it doesn't matter. I go to my layout, I then take my default layout and I put, for instance, I want my header to be the cat name, and then in the actual image, I'm going to put that cat picture. So now, should look pretty much the same, a couple of nuances unless I've screwed something up. You'll see that this is the cat name, And whether you know it or not, this actually is driven data-wise. So if I wanted to change this picture to a different cat, then I could easily put in that different URL. And again, that could be read from like a profile, like the person's extended user information table. So as you can see, having data-driven HTML is very powerful because now, it just, boom, you just tie it to some data source, put in the curly brackets with the field names, and Alpha will do the rest. Even these button names could be changed and the colors could be changed. Anything in this HTML can now be data driven in here within it. Like even the class could be data driven because all it's going to do is take this static HTML, look for these little curly brackets, and then swap them on the fly. So let me see. I want to see something else real quick. Let me see. Oh, there's another picture right there. So let me go ahead and grab that. So let me, okay, let me delete this. I just want to show you how cool it is from that standpoint. So go put in my template. I'm going to put in this cat picture template. And notice this is the URL of that cat. So I'm going to grab that, scroll over. Copy that. Then I'm going to go back to my HTML and I'm going to go to my data source. And in this case, I'm going to change out my cat picture. And let's run this thing again. And it's a little off because the picture has to be formatted correctly, size, etc. But you'll notice it just swapped out that picture from this picture to here. So again, data-driven HTML, super powerful. And the neat thing is that you can now go out to Fiverr or something else and tell someone, hey, do me a favor, create me a layout that looks like this. And they'll give it that HTML and CSS to you. And then once you have that HTML and CSS, then what will happen is you just go in and make it driven by data and you're good to go. Pretty neat stuff, a lot of fun. And again, kind of went into why Viewboxes are super powerful because they can be data driven and you can take the best of HTML and CSS world and combine it with the best of data driven, and it's all point and click. No coding necessary.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Another Viewbox question. How do you compress the space between the rows of data if you didn't want as much space?
So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to my Viewbox properties here. And actually not the Viewbox, I'm sorry. Let me go to the child and I'll go to the Viewbox layout. So you'll see we have something called the ListRowContainer. And you'll notice that it's using this class name right here. And this is a class that we've added. And actually, I think, does it do it there? No. So what you would do is, this is a theme class. You would modify this theme class to adjust elements that are associated with it. So for instance, if I were to turn this into freeform, you'll see that the class that is applying to the row is this, and then you would go in and modify those pieces there. So it takes a little research to go in and find that theme information. Maybe Sarah can point us to where we would go find that to be able to adjust it. But then the beauty of that is then, once you've adjusted it, all of your view boxes will have the same there. Now, remember, we use this, but you are welcome to add your own, classes. So you could actually use your own div and your own technology in here to create your own sort of row-based capability. This is just the one that's built in, makes life really easy and simple. But you'd have to modify this class. Once you modify it, that modifies like how much padding and everything else that's associated with a row that's displayed on your screen.
Cool. Thanks very much.
You're
Speaking
welcome.
of Sarah, I didn't actually introduce Sarah, although she showed up
I
like
know.
2 minutes late today, so it's not entirely my fault. But joining us today, of course, Sarah Mitchell, in charge of documentation, they're actually helping us field the questions today. But if you have any questions, and Sarah can give you documentation links we will happy to post those.
And she did not pay me to show the cat pictures today. I know she likes
didn't.
cats,
I
but
know.
I did that on my own recourse here.
Yeah.
I don't have to pay anybody for cat pictures. Cat pictures are free.
That's the whole internet is full of them. That's all it
Yeah,
is.
exactly. That's why the internet was
Uh,
built, if I'm not mistaken, was to share cat pictures and funny cat videos. That was
so
ARPANET. They created ARPANET for that.
one more Viewbox question, then I have a
Yes,
couple
please.
other Alpha Anywhere questions. So in the Viewbox freeform editor, the question is, how do you do an alt trim on a field? Imagine you have a field and it's got a lot of extra blank space at the end. I
Ah,
imagine that
good
may
point.
not be an issue if you're displaying HTML, which tends to trim additional spaces
Right.
anyway.
The way you really handle that is handle it at the data source.
Hmm.
And I was working with a couple people this week, and right now you'll notice that I'm bringing it out of a table name. What you can also do is put this out on a view. So I could be actually looking at a view versus a table. You'll see the little, I don't know why they're glasses, I guess, viewing through glasses or something like
There you
that.
go. Oh, you got
Yeah.
it.
So in that view, you can manipulate the data before the view box. So, part of the challenge is the view box is really powerful. You can do a lot of really cool formatting, but certain things are actually easier to do in a database. Like for instance, I had a client who was like, "Oh, I want my dates to look this way." And I said, well, just go use the SQL format code in the SQL database to actually format your dates, and then they just display properly. So it's a judgment call. Sometimes it's like there may be a reason to do the date formatting here. So a couple ways you can handle that is tie it to a view and then do all the trimming and everything else you want to do within the database. So when it comes up, it's just here's some data, go ahead and display it. But in the fields too, you can do what's called templating. I think we'll have to check on that. So we have a template in here, and this is where you can also do some manipulation on the field before it's actually merged into the HTML from there, including format directives like making things text or date or there. So there's a lot of power in terms of what's called templating, is that it's going to take that raw data coming back from the data source, allow you to manipulate it. Then once it's manipulated, then it will display it here. So you can use templates to do that kind of pre-formatting of the information before it actually gets displayed here. But it's really more HTML formatting that you're doing at this point, like a numeric format. So we can do things like formatting a number. So I can go ahead and say, you know what, I want to do it this way. So now what will happen is it's going to format the number into this with a data there. So I click OK, and this is the formatting that's going to take place on the field before it's merged into my template there. So I think you may even be able to do a trim inside here, because this is could be even JavaScript. Haven't played with this a whole lot. Here, format directives. There's documentation around here, but that's how you would probably do some of that trimming and stuff if you wanted to do it in the user interface. Now, the third method you have is, remember our data source, I'm bringing it directly from the database, but I could do a REST API, and in my REST API, I could maybe manipulate that data and format it before it comes back. I could do custom, where I do an XBasic call the data, then manipulate the data in XBasic, and then provide it to the user interface. So 3, 4, and I hate to use this term, but ways to skin a cat on this technology. I just lost all of my
Oh man,
juju
all your goodwill towards cat lovers down the drain.
flushed
Yeah.
down the toilet.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
No.
So there's different ways you can handle it from here in terms of manipulating that. I try to do stuff in the database because it just works, and then it's in a central location, easy to change. But there may be things like, for instance, maybe you want to change that date on the fly based upon where the browser is being run. So like in the US, it displays it a certain way, but if I'm in Europe, I'm going to display it a different way.
Yeah, good
So you'll
point.
have to, if it's coming out of the database, well, how do you know that you've kind of fixed this date structure there? In the user interface, you could say, oh, I'm going to manipulate it, look at whatever the browser current status is, because you can kind of tell maybe where the area code is, or I'm sorry, the time code is, or the IP address or something. Then you may need to do it more in this area here.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, now a non-Viewbox question. Actually, two non-Viewbox questions. The first one is, can you display the value of an argument in the HTML item of a control bar?
Run that by me. I'm sorry.
Can you display the value of an argument in the HTML of a control bar? Let's say you had an
Yes, you
argument.
can.
Maybe the
Yeah.
argument had the
Let me do
the
that.
person
But
who's
just by the
looking
way,
had their name.
I want to
Mhm.
I wanted to say also there's something called server side after query event. And the idea
Mhm.
there is that instead of you having to write all this, you can actually use this to build your query. And then what this is, you can call a function here, and I'll call this post process for a better word. Come on, process. Okay. And in here, basically it gives you, and you get some information about the query and the information so you can manipulate it on the post process. So there's some other things that can happen in terms of that. So it's there. Okay, so let's go back to the control bar. So I'm going to click new. Let's see how much time we have. I might be able to pull it off. Let's see here. UX. We're going to go ahead and try it. Okay, we'll go controls, put a panel card in here. It's like speed dating, you know, it's like, we'll see if I do it. We'll put a header in here. I'm gonna say yes, include a control bar. I'm gonna go to my control bar. I'm gonna go first to my items. I'm gonna add a new item for an HTML. We'll call this HTML argument. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is go to data and I'm gonna create this and I'll go arg data and I'll go test not set for the default. Okay, then I'm going to go to my layout and I'm going to add a layout. And I'm going to go here, I'm going to add a line, and in the middle, I'm going to put in my HTML argument. And I'm going to do one other thing. Notice I created an item. This is just some HTML. I could hard code that here, or I could say that HTML needs to be that arg data.
Ah.
And what it does is that whenever this shows, what happened there? Oh, got to put it over there. Whenever this shows, it goes over and looks in this data, and this data can be set. So let's go ahead and click OK. So now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to call this, let's see, control bar argument set text. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go here to my button here. I'm going to add a button here for testing, just to show you how to work it. I'm going to go into testing. I'm going to add a new action, which is in my control bars. And I'm going to update control bar data. So it's a built-in function that sets and updates that. So the control bar here, the data variable is arg data, and I'm going to do it to cool webinar. Okay.
Oh, I think you're missing a
Refresh.
parenthesis.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah, sorry, a single quote.
Oh, good point. Good catch. Thank you. That's me. Huh? Okay. So you'll notice when I run this, the control bar now is going to be not set, but when I hit that, notice it updated there.
Cool.
Great. Okay, so now let's do this. Let's go into properties. Let's go ahead and find my arguments. I'm going to set an argument here, and that an argument's going to be control bar text. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my server side event here, and normally I'm calling this and passing it in, but there's a way I can just hard code that for now. So I'm going to go here, and this is a trick. You can actually control bar. Actually, let me even show a better way to do this. Normally you're going to pass your argument in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a test or a technique down here at the bottom of my undialog initialize. I'm going to put it here. This little script is kind of cool. What it does is it looks if I'm in working preview, and then it runs things to set session variables. So it's a way to test things normally. And so what I can do is I could go here, grab this, which allows me to set that argument. So this is just for testing purposes. I'll go control bar text equals hello from argument. Okay, so what's going to happen is when this runs, it's going to look at here. If I'm in working preview, it's going to run what's here, and I'm going to temporarily set that argument. If I'm running in live preview or in production, it's going to skip all this, and I just have to pass in an argument there. Okay, now what we need to do is this. I'm going to go back to my controls. I'm going to go to this button here, and I'm going to go to text mode. And this is essentially the JavaScript that sets that control bar. Text. So I'm copying that out here. I only have a few more moments. I'm going to go to my server side event, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go e.javascript is equal to, and I'm going to use my little, so I can paste it here. Okay, so now what happens when I run, the last thing Alpha is going to do is after it sets everything up, it's going to spit out this JavaScript, which if I run it right now, it's going to say my cool webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'll go in here and do working preview. And notice it said it instead of net set, it said cool webinar because it ran that JavaScript. Now what I need to do is the following. I need to replace this with my argument value. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to say argument value. And I'm putting in two quotes. This is just a quick and dirty. I put in the name of 2 quotes. Yep. And then I'm going to, I would normally use control bars, but I'm going to do this simpler. I'm going to say e.javascript is equal to string e.javascript, comma, argument value, and then comma, and then I need this right here, and it's called control bar text. Okay, so real quick what this does is that whatever argument is in that argument, and this, what this does is this little string champ looks at this text right here, it finds this value here, and it replaces it with whatever's here. And let's see, yep, that's it, dot data. And this happens to be the argument. So now if this works, then it should say hello from argument up in the header. Haha, voila.
And it does.
So if you want it,
Clever.
I know I went through really quick because I'm using some tricks here, but just find out with the JavaScript and spit it out. And then, you know, the trick, a couple of things that were unique about this is I had to kind of manually set the argument since I'm in working preview. But again, this will get ignored. And when this loads, and if you pass an argument in, then I'm just basically substituting the value of that argument there. And then the e.javascript will spit it out, run this JavaScript, update your control bar header, you're golden.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you everyone who showed up today. We've come to, I had 2 minutes over. That's okay. More or less. Thank you everyone who showed up today. If you do have any further questions, please send them to guides@alphasoftware.com. If you'd like a copy of the components that we used today, also use that same email address to reach us. I hope to see you next Wednesday, and take care. Stay safe and stay well. Take care. Bye-bye.